Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol. Now, normally when I want to review a car, I'll plan quite a long way in advance. I'll think, there's a car I want to review. I'll try and organise access, be that through a dealer or through a press team. I'll get access to the car, and before that I'll plan what I'm going to try and look at, what the story's going to be, how the video's going to work. It takes a long time. That car, I had absolutely no plans to review that car, but I got it yesterday and it's actually really good. That is the new BMW 320d xDrive. It's a really good car. So perhaps first off I should explain. So my Mini JCW Clubman is in my dealer for a little bit of work. I'm not actually filming that because, well, it's not actually that interesting and I don't film everything about my Minis. But while she's in the dealer's workshop, they've given me a hire car. And I kind of didn't know what hire car they were going to give me, and when I picked the car up yesterday I thought, oh okay, it's the new 3 Series BMW. I have had a new 3 Series BMW on the channel already. I had the M340i xDrive Touring, which I put up against my S4, and it just really impressed me. And I drove this car home and I thought, you know what, this is just a really good car. And very often I get feedback from you lot saying, look, you're always driving the high-end super nice cars, S and RS models from Audi, M models from BMW, you know, Giulia Quadrifolios. Why don't you just review normal cars? And that got me thinking really, because this, I guess, for most BMW drivers, this is the kind of ballpark that most BMW owners are going to be looking at. It's a 2-litre diesel. It's a nice spec. It's the M Sport spec, so it's got lots of toys on it. But it's not ridiculous performance and it's not ridiculous money either. Yet I still think it looks like a very smart car, particularly in this spec. Now I must say though, for any of you that believe in reincarnation, believe me, you don't want to come back as a hire car. Although this car's not that old, the paintwork, the bodywork really is awful already. It's got so many swirls around. It's clearly just washed with a bit of sandpaper, I think. I have done my best to make it look lovely, but it does need some proper paint correction now. But anyway, it's not about the paintwork. Let's just have a chat about the car. So first off, the styling of the new 3 Series I actually think is really nice. I must say, BMW, the design team that look after the rear end of the car, are way more on point than the guys that look after the front end of the car. Now actually, as it happens, this car doesn't have the grills that are too big. If you've seen the new 4 Series that's about to come out, the grills, they're just a little bit too much for me. No comments about them looking like a kind of, you know, beaver with the big teeth or anything. They're not too bad. However, if I was speccing this car out, it's so murdered out, this chrome would definitely go. I'd have that blacked out, and I think the front end of this car would then look absolutely ace. But overall, I think it's a really nice, really sleek looking car. Let's just have a wander around the back and you'll see what I mean about the back looking better than the front. Now I am a big fan of privacy glass, especially when you've got a dark body colour like this car. Black and black, it just looks the business for me. It kind of gives it almost like an exec saloon, dare I say even a sort of limo type look, which works really well. The shark fin antenna on the roof adds a nice touch, but for me the 3 Series, the new one, it's these rear tail lights. I just think the design's really smart, and then you've got a couple of proper exhausts down there. Nothing too flash, nothing too big. After all, this is only a 2-litre diesel. And then I think the thing that makes the car work the best for me is that badge just there. I know there are many BMW fans that think it should just be rear-wheel drive, but if I was someone who's doing lots and lots of miles a year and I was looking for a company car that was going to basically do me all year round, not just in nice sunny weather like this, but in the middle of the winter when it's rainy and the grip levels are low and it's horrible on the roads, that badge just makes this car work so well for me. I really do like it. As you know, I'm an Audi owner, so obviously I'm a bit of a fan with Quattro. In terms of the boot, it's huge. It's cavernous in there. And again, that just makes this car really usable. There are a few things I don't like, especially around the side. Now, I'm a real wheels kind of guy. Whenever I'm buying a car or looking for a car, I'll always try and look for the largest wheel option possible. I think wheels make a car. And therefore, those wheels on this particular car do nothing for me at all. They're 18-inch wheels, and that wheel design is far too busy for me. They would be an absolute nightmare to keep clean. However, if I'm going on the premise that this would make a really great business car to do lots and lots of miles in, that slightly smaller wheel size, slightly larger tyre wall would make for a much more comfortable ride, and we'll talk a bit more about that when we're out on the road driving. So probably, if you were using this car a lot, that would be the wheel to go for. And this car's also got Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres on it as well, so I know that it's going to handle nicely. It's my favourite tyre probably. So that's the sensible wheel choice. I would maybe, I don't know, I'd make a compromise with ride quality just to get a slightly bigger wheel and one that looks a bit nice and fills the wheel arch a little bit more. But I know that's the sensible choice. Let's have a look on the inside. This is just a really nice place to be in here. In this car, I've probably done maybe 3.5 hours of driving since I've had it. But when I had the M340i, which, let's face it, is pretty much the same cabin, I did a lot of miles in that car and it was just very, very comfortable. I've got all the technology I need. I really do like the BMW infotainment system. The sat nav, the front binnacle is really nice, and then in here I've also got a wireless charge pad, which interestingly doesn't get nearly as hot as my Mini. When I had my phone on charge in there last night, and I was using Apple CarPlay wirelessly, and the phone just didn't get as hot as my Mini, which I find really interesting. Everything else is just nicely laid out, supremely comfortable driving position, nice thick rim to the steering wheel, which is what I like. Everything's at a finger's touch, and then when it starts to get dark, you get this kind of, I won't be able to pick it up now because it's bright sunshine, but there's like a nice kind of blue accent, little bit of mood lighting that happens in the cabin. These seats, I think they look really nice. They are pretty comfortable as well, and there is loads of room in the back. So again, if I think about the premise of just a really good car to do lots of miles in, what we used to call a rep-mobile, this is it. You know, certainly this cockpit has all the toys that I need. And again, because it's a hire car, because I don't have a spec sheet, and I've not got oodles of time this week to kind of sit here and work out all the things that have been fitted to the car, but it has all the things you want. So I think the next thing we do is we pop up the road and just talk about the driving dynamics of the car. It's not the fastest car in the world. It's a 2-litre diesel at the end of the day. However, it does go, and it does put a smile on your face. Now we're out and about driving. Let's talk about how this car feels. Now, first things first, it has a feeling of really nice, solid, well put together construction. The steering feel is nice and weighted, and it just feels like a quality product, which, let's face it, is no great surprise. But what's under the bonnet is something I think we need to start to talk about, because this wouldn't be my first choice of engine. I'm not really a kind of oil burning kind of guy. I have had a couple of diesels before, but they were kind of SUV. I had a Discovery and I had a Range Rover Sport. Now, you know, you don't really in this country want the petrol V8 version of that. Well, you want it, but you can't afford to run it. But I don't know what it is about diesel, and I know the characteristic that people love the most, those people who run them anyway, is the kind of really nice, torquey, smooth pull that you get from a diesel. However, the thing I don't like about diesels is that they just don't rev out, and they also don't sound really, well, they just don't sound, do they? I know there are a few modern diesels that have a kind of augmented, more throaty sound. That SQ8 I had recently sounded really quite nice, but this thing, it doesn't make a sound. It doesn't have any kind of sound emotion whatsoever, and I get that, because that's not what this car's about. This car review today isn't going to be about, listen what happens when I put it in sport mode, look at the noisy exhaust button. That's not what this car's about. What this car's about is doing lots of miles economically. So the 2-litre diesel in this car is about 190 horsepower, but it will deliver just over 60 miles to the gallon. Interestingly, I've just put 30 quid's worth of diesel in it at the filling station, and that 30 quid's worth of diesel gave me around about 300 miles of range, which is incredible, really. So if you really want it, I've got just over half a tank of fuel in the car and I've got 300 miles of range. So, you know, if you're going to do lots and lots of miles, if you are pounding the dual carriageways and motorways of the country, going from place to place, you don't want to be stopping for fuel very often. And this engine and this delivery of fuel economy versus kind of nice driving feel, I kind of get it. I do get it. I wouldn't buy it, but I get it. But now we're coming onto some national speed limit road, and we just depress the throttle a little bit. The pickup's really nice and smooth, and when I was driving this yesterday without cameras running, smooth is definitely the word for this car. You know, we were talking about those 18-inch wheels with a slightly higher sidewall on the tyre. What that does is it translates to a really lovely, smooth feeling ride. It soaks up the bumps, and that's where the smaller size wheel comes in play, really. It just soaks the bumps up. It might not look as nice, it might not be up my street in terms of looks, but it certainly looks nice. Let's just stick it into sport mode. Now that will just pep things up a little bit. I get a slightly more funky display on my head-up display, which is really nice. But now the car is actually pretty peppy and pretty sporty. It's got lots of low down torque, which means it's usable, and a nice kind of it's coming out of the corners. You don't need to rev the nuts off it. The gearbox is slick. It's the normal BMW fare. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but the feeling of the car when you want to push on a little bit, when you stick it up into sport mode, is nice. The steering's responsive, the suspension's nice and compliant. This particular road surface isn't the best, if I'm honest, and it's soaking those bumps up. And then if we just come into this corner, I'm still in D. I'm not going to do manual changes or anything. It just, now I've got a nice pull out the corners. Look, performance isn't going to set your pants on fire. I think this car does 0 to 60 in about 7.4 seconds, so it's really not a sports car. And it's quite refreshing for me, actually, to drive a car that's not a sports car, because now I need to kind of totally assess it on other criteria other than ultimate performance. Right, let's go and find a few corners, see what this steering feels really like. What I'm also going to do, I'm just going to drop it into the manual box, just to give me a little bit more connection with the car. But I like how it feels. It just feels mature. It feels comforting. It doesn't take a great amount of energy out of you to drive it. It's the kind of car that you would want to do lots of miles in. I think sometimes when you drive really aggressive sports cars with really sharp steering and sharp suspension, sometimes they're a little bit tiring. You kind of feel like you need to give them all of your attention. You need to kind of concentrate to make sure you're not going to either lose your license or stick it in a ditch. And I don't get the feeling of that with this car at all. The head-up display's got quite a nice feature with its current setting. So I've got the speed limit showing, but I've also got my current speed, and when I go above the speed limit, my current speed goes red, so I know I'm speeding. But pulling out of that corner in fourth, manual changes are super smooth. Now this car does have lane departure warning, and it is quite aggressive, so when you've got it on, if you just drift towards the centre line or towards the inside line, you just get quite an intervention on the steering, and I'm not a big fan of that. I understand why we have lane departure warnings, but honestly, why can't people just look out the front window and steer in the middle of the lane? It's not difficult. Now I'm in sport. The head-up display has a shift changing warning light, which is quite nice. Kind of adds to the dynamic sporty feel. But yeah, you can, you know, on the dual carriageway motorway, you stick this into cruise control at 70 miles an hour, you're going to munch the miles and you're not going to use a great deal of fuel doing it. When you get on a beautiful bit of road like this, stick it into sport, configure yourself an individual sport setting, go to the paddles, and actually it's quite a nice, rewarding car to drive. It's not quick, but it's a nice feeling car, a nice balanced car. Let's have a talk about the X-Drive. On a day like today, I don't think you really need it. You'll be fine with just rear-wheel drive, and let's face it, 190 horsepower isn't really going to get you into trouble. But I can imagine, you know, in the colder conditions or wetter conditions, that X-Drive would just give you that little bit of comfort, that little bit of balance. Just take your mind off of worrying about accelerating too hard out of a corner and just having a bit of back-end traction trouble. I like that. Now, we haven't talked about price yet, and clearly there's lots of different spec you can chuck at a car like this, but you're looking in the kind of ballpark of about 38,000 quid. This is the M Sport variant. It's got some nice toys on it. It's got like gesture control, which I've never really understood the gesture control. Why don't you just use the dial? I mean, I've had a couple of cars with gesture control, and you end up doing this all the time and trying to make it do stuff and change the channel. Oh, there we go. And every now and again it works. So about 38 grand for what I think is a handsome looking car, excellently put together. It certainly feels like a quality product in here. The choice of materials I think is absolutely bob on. These seats are nice. You know, there's kind of high grade plastics on the dash. There's not a great deal of piano black. It's all kind of like brushed aluminium and so on. The steering wheel's got lots of nice leather on it. So it feels like a lovely place to be. So if you're looking for this as a company car, the other thing you might be interested in, so this car does 121 grams per kilometre of CO2. So I guess, you know, in terms of things like tax and all that kind of stuff, it probably works out quite favourably. You'll have to decide whether or not you want to buy a diesel and what you think the long-term future of diesels are. But whether I like the driving characteristics of a diesel or not, I think they have been demonised quite a lot in the last few years. But I know the government in the UK made a massive thing about trying to get people into diesels, and then suddenly you were the devil's spawn if you drove one, and you've got cities starting to ban diesels into their city centres. Yet actually, if you look at what comes out the tailpipe of a diesel, it's one of the cleanest cars out there. So I know Dieselgate and all that kind of stuff didn't help. So, you know, from an environmental tax efficiency point of view, if you were a company car driver and you were going to do lots and lots of miles, and this fit within your budget, it'd be a brilliant option. I wouldn't buy one. I wouldn't. This isn't a car for me at all. But what I want to try and do, you know, post-COVID, is bring you a range of cars. I still want to do the high performance stuff, but every now and again I want to get into the normal car for normal people. And I know you might argue at 38,000 quid, this isn't a car for everybody. Clearly it's still an expensive car. But for a new car, and I'm sure if you looked at the used market, a sort of 12-month-old one, you get it for much, much less than that. And it's a really, really bangingly good car. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this one. A little bit different. As I said, it was not a car review I planned to do at all. It's not a car I'd kind of seeked out to try and get a review in. It just so happened that circumstances were I ended up being given to the keys to it, and I thought, actually, do you know what? There's a bit of a story here, and I'll review it and let you know what I think of it. And overall, there's not a great deal I don't like about the car, to be honest, apart from what's under the bonnet, but I can live with that, especially at 61 miles to the gallon. But anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film, guys. But you take care. Drive safe.